Welcome to Innovative Approaches for Unconventional Students. This presentation is based upon students who have executive function issues. That includes students with ADHD. It may also include students with autism. It may also include students in other situations, but that's the idea of my unconventional students. So understanding that, let's go ahead and dive into executive function so we know what we're talking about. So executive functions are a series of functions commonly associated with our frontal lobe. Russell Barkley is one of the preeminent researchers in the area, and he notes that executive functions are self-directed actions needed to choose goals and then to create, enact, and sustain actions towards those goals, or the simplified version is self-regulation to achieve goals. Executive function is what actually allows us to accomplish things. It allows us to choose what we want to do and then to move forward with those actions. For people who don't have problems in this area, it probably feels like this isn't something that should be an issue, but for people who do have executive dysfunction, it can be very hard to accomplish goals, figure out next steps, understand how to solve a problem, understand how to make yourself move forward. It includes things like inhibition, self-directed speech, emotional management, and problem solving. So executive function is actually a long process of development in humans, and it doesn't fully develop until maybe approximately age 25. Russell Barkley would even say between 25 and 30. That means that most college students of average age, but even those who are running a little bit later, may not have fully developed executive function. So even if you're not talking about students with diagnosed ADHD, you may still find executive function issues as part of the key problems. ADHD in particular makes executive function complicated because it is an executive function disorder. So it directly affects self-regulation and the ability to accomplish goals. Good executive function and self-regulation usually is a requirement of college-level work. College-level work is looking at future goals, many of which are large assignments or other key parts of classes driven by self-regulated actions. You're not sitting in the room every single day being told what to do and in what order, and you have to manage yourself to do it. This is a big part of what gets our students into trouble, and being able to both identify the specific issues and provide some resources to help them can really be useful to college students who are finding some of these things difficult. So how do you know that executive function is a problem? I always say you're looking for your but students. So students who seem like they should be able to accomplish a goal, but. So we often have people who are, and this was a good descriptor of me at various points in my life, probably still is, smart, but forgetful. I was very intelligent, but never remembered to do my homework. Understands, but is disorganized. So they know what they need to do, but they lose everything. Knows the material, but can't focus. So if you ask them questions, they seem like they get it, but if they need to sit down and read something, they have a very difficult time doing it. And probably one of the ones that has shown up on many ADHD report cards for many years is could do this, but doesn't put in the effort. Or that's what it seems like to people who are not used to dealing with this. So if you have any students that have fallen into these categories, you might be dealing with executive function and not specifically focus and motivation, which is what a lot of people often think. So let's talk about the areas that can be trouble when people are lacking executive function. Some of these will seem like they overlap with what you might think, but I promise you they act a little bit differently from an executive function concept. So I'm going to walk through uncertainty, perfectionism, activation, memory, and organization, explain some of the things that can go wrong in these areas, and then give tips for working with students who may have these problems. Uncertainty is a big one. Ambiguous tasks are hard to start. So one, you often need to figure out what an ambiguous task is. In college, an ambiguous task is studying, because studying isn't an action. Reading is an action. Highlighting is an action. It's a poor action, but it's an action. Writing notes is an action. That's a much better action. Making flashcards is an action, but studying is not an action. And many of our students have never learned what studying actually is. Therefore, when you're giving students a task, if they're having trouble getting started on it, you might wonder if they don't actually know what the first step would be. So when you're working with students like that, you want to really focus on finding a step of a process. When we say, well, you need to try to learn something, or you need to read and understand this, that's an ambiguous task. But if you say, hey, read 2 paragraphs and write down main concepts, that is something someone could do, and it's fairly easy to put into action. I gave some notes for studying a moment ago. What do you do when you study? You might make flashcards. You might take notes. You might reread sections. That's probably the worst way to do it, but that's at least something to do. How do you start an assignment? So many students will be used to, well, if I have a piece of paper in front of me and it has steps on it, I can follow them. But if it's write an essay on, that's an ambiguous task. An ambiguous task is, well, where do I start with that? Do I need to do research? Do I need to start writing something? Do I need to look up a thing ahead of time? Every assignment is going to be different. And so every assignment, it would help if you could provide some examples, let people see what an end product looks like, because people with executive function have trouble conjuring up in their mind what the end product would be. Therefore, showing them an example is very helpful. And then also talking through the actual steps of a process. One of the things that I have put together for students is my sort of need a suggestion section. If what you need to do is read, it gives you something to do. Read a section and take notes. If it's a literature assignment, you might read a little bit more. And people often don't know what to do with, like, oh, I just have to read this book chapter. And I still strongly suggest doing something with the material other than just reading it. So I would say read a few pages and then write a quick summary of what you remember, because that helps the student do something with the work. Otherwise, their eyes might scan the page, but does it get into their brain? Hard to tell. For problem-solving assignment, you would start with a problem. You would think about the steps. So, hey, does this problem fit into a mold? And then you would give it a try. And I often say to students that one of the problems that they have is, which we'll get into in a moment, is they want to get it right, is the first try doesn't always have to be right. For research-based assignments, you want to know how to find a database. Sometimes students don't even know where to look for something, and Google is almost never the answer, especially with the amount of nonsense AI it pops up nowadays. For writing assignments, an outline is often a good idea, and there's a number of my studying techniques that are a lot better than just go back to the book. So these are all ways to give students something direct and specific to work with. The next problem our students have, which I alluded to a second ago, is perfectionism. People with executive dysfunction or ADHD often grew up in a situation where they have been wrong a lot. That can really create a lot of anxiety about being wrong. And it's very difficult sometimes to get past that. The fear of being wrong can immediately stop somebody in their tracks. As instructors, I think it's always important to model the importance of mistakes. Mistakes are actually a key part of the learning process. We don't learn well if we just recognize stuff and know it. We learn well when we get it wrong and we have to try it again. I model such things by using processes in class where I'm going to be wrong. It's not usually about the material, but sometimes it is. I'm not a very good speller. And so I will tell students I'm going to write something on the board. I need somebody to check my spelling. And a lot of times I have to flip-flop some vowels. I learn student names by practicing them out loud, which means I've got like my list in front of me and I look at somebody and I go, are you? And a lot of times they are not. And then I have to try again and they watch me get it wrong. It can make it difficult to work through revisions when you're worried about being perfect. And so building revision into a process is key, because otherwise they don't want to show anybody, not you, not a friend, not a tutor, until something is correct. So building in the version of, no, we're going to start with something terrible. We're going to share it and look at it. And we know it's going to be terrible, but that's how we improve it, is a key piece of what you're doing. And having it as part of the process helps. You can also guide students to review each other so that they can help each other see how bad each other is. It's often better than having an authority figure do it. A very well-written rubric can be used to help a student guide themselves through. So if they already know that the section of the rubric is very few spelling errors, some spelling errors, a lot of spelling errors, they can mark one of those things without actually going through and correcting the spelling errors. And it gives everybody a sense of where they're at. You can do that with material as well. Focus on high expectations, as in, we know you can do it. A lot of times the other problem with perfectionism is that students don't think they can get there. They're so worried that they're going to fail again because they have so much failure in their life that they assume everybody thinks failure is just the way it's going to be. So if you're like, hey, I believe that you can make this better, or I believe that you can do this, students will latch onto that. And in some cases, get students to go for good enough. Good enough is something to grade. Perfect may never get completed. And so sometimes you really need to get a student to be like, have you at least put some work into it? And are we somewhere? Great. We're going to deal with it right now, and we'll fix it later. This was a sheet I made to try to get students out of that mindset of some of the difficult things, because often they get stuck in something like, oh, I can't do this. And instead, you add yets to things. I haven't figured this out yet. They feel like they're bad at something. You can say, no, you're still in the learning process. College isn't I walk in and I know everything day one and I can just accomplish all the goals. College is I have to spend some time working on it, and that's pretty important. When things are hard, instead of just saying I'm done with it, you can say, okay, it is okay to put it aside, but we're going to try again. And we can't always try harder. Sometimes we have to try differently. We got to do something that's going to be different to get there, and keep focusing on, hey, we're going to try new and different ways. Nothing is solid. We're never just going to stop. I remind students that I am also always learning and always improving, and I think that helps. Activation. Activation is my answer to motivation, because motivation is often what we talk about. Well, you got to be motivated to do something. I can be motivated to do something absolutely all day. I am motivated to have a clean house and to have clean dishes. But when I look at my messy house and my dirty dishes, it is not an amount of motivation that's going to get me to do it. It is something that gets me over the initial hump of, oh man, that thing looks so hard and impossible, and I need to know how to start it. Sometimes activation is about interest. You want to help students find ways to connect with the material so that they see why they might want to do something. That connects to the idea of motivation, but also adds that little bit of, ooh, that's cool. Let me look a little further into that. If you can get over the hump of, ooh, that's cool, then that often gets you to the next 5 steps. Sometimes activation is about accountability. I can't do this on my own, but I am much more able to work if somebody's working alongside me. They don't even have to be doing the same assignment as me. Sometimes it's just, oh, you're doing work? Oh, I should be doing work. Let's make sure we're both doing work, and then we get it done. So you can body double yourself with students, have them come to your office hours and do the work in front of you, even if they don't need questions, or you can suggest that they work together to do so. You can also use regular check-ins, because nothing activates or motivates someone more than knowing that someone is going to ask them if they've done the thing. So if you have a student who has trouble getting things done, a regular check-in of, hey, every week we're going to stop and look at each other and go, did you do what you needed to do? Is really going to make them go, oh, now I need to get it done because it has to be there. Breaking things into small steps is useful for activation. That goes all the way back to that beginning of ambiguous pieces. Sometimes the smallest possible step is helpful. Sometimes it's just that you can be, I can work on this for 5 minutes. If I can do that, and that's the smallest possible piece, then at least I've done something. And honestly, the number of times that 5 minutes turn into 10, turn into 15, turn into 20, absolutely reasonable. And find small goals and reward for getting there. We like to talk about the idea that there's intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, but when your executive function isn't working right, neither is your intrinsic motivation. The part that actually works to do that is connected to the executive function that can't make those connections in the brain. So sometimes you need an external reward. My sister used to do her writing on a website called Written Kitten. Every time you wrote 100 words, it gave you a picture of a cat. Cats are cute. Then you write another 100 words. Rewards don't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's just, hey, did you do that thing? Great job. And that's enough to get somebody to the next step. Speaking of interest, I created an interest assessment that students can use to think about how they might be connected to a class. You could run this as an actual class activity, or you could provide it to a student to do on their own. So you say, why are you in this class? Let's think about what we're doing here. Are we in here because we need it, we're forced to be here, or because we like it? And let's be real about this, because that's what's going to help us get to the right point. Next is, when will you use this information in your future career? In many cases, there's a way to connect your class to what a student is doing. We put classes in student schedules because we think they're going to use it. Sometimes they don't think about that, but we can say, hey, I know you're not going to be a writer, but you need to be able to write clearly for people to understand. I know you're not going to be a public speaker, but you need to be able to explain yourself to someone. I teach science, and very often it's hard to apply it to your future career precisely, but it's easy to do the next thing, which is where you can apply this class material to your life now. I teach human biology, and I always like to say, unless you're for some reason not human, you probably could understand and use some of this information. Understanding how our bodies work help us do everything. So trying to connect to also, where can I use this now? Can I connect this to something at home? Can I solve a problem at home? Can I use it as a hobby, not even as a career? And if you really can't find a way to connect to the material in the class, at least think about how the class works. Does the class do something you might like, where you get to do work with your hands? Sometimes in science, the lab is the thing that gets students interested. There are ways to organize information. Do you like to read? Do you like to watch videos? Can you find a way to make something out of what you're doing? And so being able to take their interests and connect them to a class can be very important for activation and then motivation. Memory is an area that trips people up with executive function, because there are 2 types of memory that get used in college settings: working memory and long-term memory. Often people with ADHD have good long-term memory. They're able to put concepts into their head that they can pull out later. And sometimes their long-term memory picks up things that you would not expect. I have a significant number of musicals memorized from beginning to end. Is that useful in my science classes? Not really. But I know my memory works. On the other hand, my working memory does not do what it's supposed to do, which is to help me remember something from moment to moment as I need it. Or also my prospective working memory, which means I see something and it reminds me to do things. And so I very often walk into the next room and don't have any concept of what I did a moment ago. And people can talk to me in the morning, and then 2 days later, I will never have remembered a conversation exists. So those are very different kinds of memory. But working memory also allows us to see the future. It allows us to visualize what we're doing, visualize an end product, visualize ourselves doing something. And sometimes that piece of memory doesn't work well. I can't think through a thought, a complex thought inside my head, because halfway through the thought, I've forgotten what I'm talking about. And that's just inside my head. On the other hand, if I talk out loud, or I sketch as I go, I write something out, I'm looking at it, I physically move something around, that can be really helpful for me to get the sense of what's going on. If I just have to sit and think about it in my head, that's a problem. If students have test taking accommodations, suggesting that they use it and that they do talk out loud or have the ability to sketch something is super helpful for them. The other problem with memory is, of course, memory and time, which includes things like I referenced a moment ago, the doorway effect. You walk out of a room and you've forgotten everything that happened in the other room. For students, that can mean the assignment they need to do, the thing that's going to be due next. So making sure they write things down is very, very important. Making sure you make reminders or alarms can be very important. The other thing about working memory when it's not working correctly is that it doesn't connect well to time. Working memory often is something happening now or something not due yet. So instead of something being due in 4 weeks and me being able to see that, oh, well, in 2 weeks I should have this done, in 3 weeks I should have this done, my memory can't put those pieces together. It just knows it's not due. And then 2 days before it's due, my memory will go, oh, hey, that thing is due now. Do the whole thing. We would like our students not to be in that kind of crunch situation. So providing them with time-based reminders in situations where you wouldn't normally is very helpful. Cueing is probably one of my favorite and most useful concepts for working memory because it uses your environment to help your memory. I'm already understanding that my memory doesn't work. Therefore, I try to build my environment around it. I stick visual things in places where I will go regularly. So put things next to the door so I literally bump it as I walk out. Leave myself a note about what I'm doing or where I've left off. So if I'm going to stop in the middle of something, I am not going to come back and remember what I was thinking. I need to at least make a note about that. You can use auditory cues. I like the fact that my wristwatch buzzes at me when I need to do certain things. You can have someone else help you with some of your cues and so call you about what you need to do. You can also make things recurring. Having a recurring meeting with a student who's having trouble keeping track of things is a recurring cue of some kind. Or even if the cue is that they see you, but then immediately after class, they have a way to go somewhere and accomplish a goal, then at least they are able to use that. So cueing can be very helpful. Finally, organization. People with executive function have trouble organizing, and not just organizing that is obvious, but organizing that is hard to put into words. Without working memory to put the pieces, the steps of something in order in your head, you need to put those steps somewhere else. It is also very hard to understand the difference between urgent things and important things. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Physical organization for somebody with executive function needs to be easy. It needs to be obvious. It needs to be sighted. People with ADHD often say out of sight, out of mind. If I have to put something in a drawer, I have forgotten that I have it. I can't put things in a lot of separate drawers or I do not know where anything is. So I need to have a system where something gets put in one place and everything is in that place and I can see it all as needed. And it makes sense so that when I go back the next time, I don't have to think about it because I won't remember. Mental organization in people with these issues can seem very haphazard. And in a big part, the working memory is a piece of that. So if they seem to be all over the place, get them to write it down. Take pieces of paper or magnets or something you can maneuver and say, well, what are the pieces we need? We might get them out of order. Can we physically put them in order and make sure we know what we're doing? Can we create a list and look at it? I am definitely one of those people who that if I have a procedure to follow, and I'm a scientist, I have a lot of procedures to follow, I put it in front of me every time because I actually remember the steps I need to make breakfast in the morning if I don't have them written down someplace, and I will get all the way to the end and realize I never boiled water for tea. I know I need to look at those steps because my memory doesn't do the job for me. So speaking of urgent and important, you might have seen an Eisenhower matrix before, which is how you try to choose what to do. A lot of times what we should be doing are important things. Urgent things need to get done right now, but not urgent things are the things we should be working on our way to get somewhere. And that's often where ADHD people get in trouble because they have difficulty seeing what's not urgent but important. Those are the out of sight, out of mind things. They're the not now things. They're the pieces that I should be working on, but I don't. On the other hand, there are a lot of urgent things that get my attention very quickly. They might be emails, they might be student questions, they might be something on social media, and I feel like I need to deal with it right this second because it's urgent, but I really don't. And then furthermore, not important, not urgent things that are kind of interesting to an ADHD person can get you very, very stuck in a loop. And so then you're not getting anything else done because you've lost all sense of urgency and importance. And all you see is, ooh, here's a rabbit hole I'm going to fall down. Knowing that those are traps is important to getting to the other side, because if I see that I have been researching something that I need to actually give a presentation on, I've been doing the research for an hour, I need to stop and actually do the presentation. I need to not go check my email when I'm in the middle of working on something. And so I need to know what my action steps are, and I need to accomplish them. I need to have somebody to help me stay on task. I need to use all of the methods I've talked about up to now to get me into the category of not urgent, important, but to get over the wall of looking at it and going, why would I work on this when it's not even due? Getting our students to see that they do that is step one in getting them to move to the next step. So, some overall ideas here. Assume people are doing their best. Students are not trying to be lazy, typically. They're not trying to forget. They don't necessarily fully deprioritize what you're doing. Their brain just doesn't do goals the way yours does. So if you assume they're doing their best, then we can start with that. Fix the environment, not the person. We can't change our brains if they aren't doing what we want, but I can make sure that the world around me supports what I need to do instead of distracts me from it. Don't try harder, try different. If you have tried one method twice and it doesn't work, try an entirely different method. You'd be surprised at how many people, when I say, oh, you need to write something, have you tried starting in the middle? Have no idea that that is a possibility. And in science, I always say, write your method section first. Aim for things that are smaller, simpler, and more direct. For students like, I don't understand this, can you break it into a smaller piece? It might not have felt like it to you originally, but you may be able to. And make as many connections as you can. Find out what students are interested in, find out what they're doing, try to back connect what you're doing to what they're doing. The more they see the big picture and the ways it's all going to work together, the better it's going to be for everybody. So, thanks. I hope you enjoyed that and found something useful. I have a ton of resources related to ADHD for both students and faculty. And good luck.